According to the little it says I'm live. Anyway, is the exciting title of the video said, this is going to be about more capacitor replacements for my Grundig console stereo system I'm working on. I say stereo generically because actually it's mono. And before I get started, I'm going to replace the Metcal tip. Whoops, actually, for some reason when I leaned over, I turned on my soldering iron instinctively. That's not what I want to do. What I want to do is replace the old tip with the new one. God, these have gotten expensive. It's interesting because it's made in USA. And wouldn't you know, even though it's made in USA, it got more expensive. Anyway, that's all I'll say about that. Turn it on. I'll tell you what, these things should replace them probably every couple months, but I go about 4 or 5 months. And they slowly but surely become less and less effective. But when they're the first month or two you use them, they're just like insanely wonderful. Let me put my reading glasses on. All right, before I get too much further, let me just casually mention that I'm going to be working on highly, possibly dangerous electronics. So don't do any of the stuff you're watching because I'm an idiot and I don't know what I'm doing. But if you tuned in, I'm continuing to recap and replace all of the paper tongue twisted paper capacitors that are all over this thing. And I got quite a few of them replaced yesterday. And I'm going to kind of focus up in this corner here because there's a ton of them that are just hidden here, there, and everywhere. And some of them in not so easy to get at places. But that's okay. I've worked on quite a few of these over the years. And I've twisted a few of them around so I can kind of see their values. This one, which seems to be coupling the output stage, has got wax melted out of its sides. It's not a wonderful sign. Anyway, I wouldn't trust any of these paper capacitors. They're not all paper. This one actually is a plastic film capacitor. You just got to check. But these wax capacitors are prone to going bad. And what I tend to do is clip one lead at a time, leaving enough of the old lead so I can tell where I left off. Couldn't quite read this one as easily because it was partially incinerated looking. And see if I can turn it around. Okay, I can read that 0.01 microfarads. And there's a hole melted in the end of it, so that is it's a burnt out capacitor. This is a perfect example. This stereo actually kind of worked when I got it, but I could tell there's definitely some weird distortion issues going on. Performance was subpar. Some people, they would get something like this, and if it worked in their eye or their mind or whatever, they'll just continue using it. And if you do that without really checking what's going on inside, or if you don't overhaul them and continue using these leaky old capacitors, you can damage something. And I've seen it happen. I've seen previously working equipment that was put back in service that blew up the power transformer because something shorted. Whew, man, new tip. Nice. Okay, let's get this old guy out here. I want to look at it in just a minute after I solder this other end in. So keep keep it out here so we can dissect it and look at it in just a minute. Anyway, but as I said on a few other episodes, don't go too crazy with your capacitor length. So I'm just concentrating to get this in here correctly. There we go. The other thing is, you see this long skinny guy here? It's a low, that's an electrolytic too, and you need to replace these. Just get to a certain age era, not a bad idea. Cheap insurance. Granted, not all capacitors are the same. You get into some military equipment, and they have, say, like a vitamin Q capacitor. If any of you know what that is, you are A-OK with a vitamin Q capacitor, even if it's from the 1940s. Okay, that is a 12 microfarad electrolytic. I don't have a 12 microfarad, but I do have a 10. And it looks like that the positive is coming off of pin number 2 of the first output tube, one of the EL95s, and then that bridges over to the pin number 2 of the second output tube. So it's sharing that. It's low voltage. Something like this, if this shorts out, that could cause you some problems depending on where it is. So again, cheap insurance, just go ahead and replace it. Except I'm not going to run its ground all the way over here because these leads are not long enough. Perfectly fine just to use this ground here because it's a chassis ground. Okay. Put this bad boy in there. Make sure this capacitor is kind of situated somewhat away from the tubes here, so the heat rises, luckily, but still not a bad idea to keep your electrolytics cooler. These are 105 rated degree, 105 Celsius rated capacitors anyway. Not a bad idea if you're working on tube-based electronics. Yeah, that makes all the difference in the world having a new soldering tip. What do we have here? It's another electrolytic capacitor. Somehow I didn't even see that. And it is chassis positive. So I need to replace that one as well, but instead it is, what is that coming off of? That's also coming off, well, that's not coming off of the output tube, that's coming off of one of the first stage IF tubes. Electrically, I'm too stupid to understand what that is. I'm assuming it's some sort of bias. Or maybe it's not a bias. I was thinking grid bias, but maybe that's not grid. something very satisfying about working on some of these really intricate chassis, especially when something is so clearly marked like this one is. I get into some things it's not marked, and it requires getting the schematic and familiarizing myself with it and looking at something and pinpointing it on the schematic to confirm its values versus what I can just look in a clean chassis with cleanly labeled parts. It's just like you can go to town, because replacing capacitors isn't the most amazing thing ever. We all have to do it. I have a friend right now who's working on a Panasonic VCR, editor VCR from the 90s, back when the last gasp of analog video before everything went to digital. Very complicated VCR, and there's like 200 capacitors in it that needed to be replaced on tiny little boards. I would go insane if I had to do that, but maybe not. Maybe it's very therapeutic, just like this is. Very close. Okay, so both of these are mounted and far away from the undersides of the tubes. Lots of air. And now that those are replaced, I can shoo those out of the way. Make more room for getting more of these out of here. So this is a typical dealio that you'll see in these radios. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit so you can see a little bit better. All right, the next one I'm going to do is this one. And if you've not worked on a German set, you'll see a lot of these expressed as comma instead of dot. Still, it's exactly the same thing, 0.02 microfarads. And there's another little trick that I use. If you get to a point where stuff is buried, like this is, you can kind of move stuff out of the way, but also if you're worried that you'll lose your place, like for example, this goes under this phenolic plastic bar, and only to come out the other side here. Yeah, I can confirm that, so I can just mark here and also here. So just in case I lose it again, I can, it's like Hansel and Gretel leaving little crumbs, except in this case, there's not going to be a little bunch of birds come and eat the whatever. 0.02. And I'm leaving myself some excessively long leads, and so I have more evidence of where that went. Looks can be deceiving. It could be a perfectly good cap or a perfectly bad cap. Who knows? My question is, why did they choose to go under like that? There's no reason to do that. Whatever. Okay. They, meaning the engineers, probably there's some very specific reason for running it exactly that way. When I first started doing this, I used to just run things everywhere. So whatever. That can have an impact on your set's performance and your alignment a little bit, depending on where it is. especially if it's in your FM circuit. Everything's more tight there, even though I think most of these paper capacitors are not associated with that as directly when it comes to fine tuning. So playing 3D Tetris, everything has to fit. All right, this is why these take forever. Running everything requires all of this maneuvering. So sometimes it's handy to have like dental picks and stuff around, and you can kind of move things to where you need them. I'm also aggravated because I lost my favorite pair of pliers, which are perfect for getting into little nooks and crannies like this. Probably in the floor of the shop somewhere. I had some not so great news about my one of my family members this week, and so I've been really not able to focus as easily, and I've been forgetting things. Come on, this is like watching paint dry. Get in there. There we go. Oops, I just knocked the whole thing over. Shit. Whoa, Nilly. All right, let's solder that in. Okie dokie. Let's make sure that's nice and in there good. Let's cut this guy out. Let's put things kind of the way they were. Oh, hey there from Cornwall. I remember me and my family went to the UK a long time ago. And it was the first time we ever flew on an airline that was anything other than Delta or United or whatever. It was the first time I'd ever been on a plane where I was like, this is insanely nice. It was British Airways. And me and my brother were both kids. But they served us beer on the plane. It was like we were over the middle of the ocean. So we're under the jurisdiction of the law of the airplane. So I had a Budweiser. I think that was one of my first beers. And it took me a while to finish it because I thought that was kind of disgusting, actually. And it turns out it's true. It is kind of disgusting. And I quit drinking almost 2 years ago, but ever since then, it's like, yeah, I was like gonna have hamburgers and have hot dogs and stuff. Like it was okay, but I never understood the infatuation with Budweiser or any of that kind of beer, any of that kind of piss water beer. And every country has that kind of beer, you know? It's not a uniquely American thing. You go to, name your country. Japan, China, India, UK, There's probably some national brand that's all the same. Piss water beer. Anyway, what blew me away, I remember it was a Boeing 777, which was the biggest plane I'd ever been on. And the interior was so much nicer. Like everything was so much nicer. The food was nicer. The seats were nicer. Everything was nicer. I was like, ever since then, I was like, I never forgot that trip, because I'm actually going to have to fly home for the aforementioned family emergency. The only thing I dread is being on the damn plane. I hate flying, and I hate the process of being herded and collected. And that's why I go to Walgreens and get some over-the-counter chewable sleeping tablets and just knock myself out. It's like, wake me up when we're there. Anyway, I paid extra because I got a direct flight, because it's a hell of a long trip I'm going to have to take. It's about 2,500 miles across country. Things have changed. Up until recently, it used to be you'd have to transfer like a billion planes to get there, to get to the tiny little airport in the place my parents live. And actually, the airport there was the one that I loved the most, because like you get there and it's like there's no one there. They have rocking chairs in the airport, so I just go sit in the rocking chairs and wait for the plane to arrive. And now it's like, anyway. Tell you what, the best plane ride, I take that back, the best plane ride I ever had was I think I had just moved out here to California, and was going to fly back home, and they messed up my flight somehow. And this was back, I guess, when airlines still had some bit of courtesy, and they messed up my flight royally. And they said, tell you what, we'll fly you first class, you know, all expenses first class with meals and everything back home. I was like, that's great, thank you, that's absolutely agreeable to me. And I get on the plane, and at first I was like, crap, because it was an ancient plane. I think it was this must have been a DC-10 or whatever. It was a McDonnell Douglas plane, which there's no more McDonnell Douglas planes in the sky except for some ancient freighters. But this plane was old, and the interior looked old. I remember it had this wild 1980s, early 80s look, or 70s, maybe even late 70s appearance. But man, they put me up there, and it was food on heated dinnerware with a huge reclining seat. And I was like, I don't care if it's an ancient plane. This is wonderful. You can put me on any plane as long as it's this comfortable. And I had a great time. Anyway, I thought about that when I was looking at tickets last night, and it's not cheap. I'm not paying $1,000 extra so I can sit on some boring ass plane like a 737 or something. There's another electrolytic up here. This thing is just chock full of these things. What does that even do? I don't know what it does. It's connected to a bunch of other crap, so obviously it does something important, so it's going to get replaced as well. And what is it value-wise? 4 microfarads. I don't have that, but I have a 10 microfarad one, and that'll just have to be fine. Speaking of airplanes, I feel stupid for not understanding this, but for years and years, the term turbofan, like a turbofan jet engine, and the word fan didn't quite resonate with me. I thought, well, obviously those giant fan blades in the front are there to compress all the air and squeeze it through into the rest of the compressor blades so you can get a jet. But the part that I missed is like your commercial planes aren't using that. They're not using a direct. They're using a bypass turbofan design. So a lot of air goes around the engine, but some of it goes into the engine. I don't know. I feel like it's one of those stupid things where I should know better and know. But whatever. So now whenever I get on a plane, it's like I'm very fascinated. It's like I want to see like the engine. All right. I'm working my way through the capacitor replacement here. But eventually I promise I'll do something different. But all of this has to be done. And I'm having to remind myself that the electronics that were quote unquote new or newer when I started collecting have gotten significant age on them in the 20 or 30 years that I've been doing this. So best to replace anything that you suspect or you find suspect unless you really know what you're looking at. Okay. It's a shame that I never got to fly on any of the giant planes. I always wanted to fly on either a 747 or an A380. And I'm not sure if there's any 747s as passenger planes anymore. I think they're all freighter planes now. And the A380, I think there's only Emirates and then a couple of other airlines, but there's none of them here. There's no reason for me to get on one of those planes, and all I'm doing is flying back and forth across the country. So it's going to be 737s it is most of the time. Flew on a 737 MAX recently, and I remember thinking, boy, I sure hope they worked out all the stupid bugs on this plane. And apparently they did, because I landed just perfectly safe. I cannot tell where this one goes. It's just buried under wire. Get this light out of the way. Sometimes you just have to dig this crap out of there. Okay, I think it goes there. Let me hold that. Where marker go? Oh, it's right in front of me. Okay. All right. pretty comfortable in that. Now, where does this other one go? It's going all the way over here. Okay, I'm just marking things up. Again, don't be afraid to do dumb stuff just so you have little ideas and clues as far as where replacement parts go. Well, some kids are going by on the dirt box again. I can hear them going down the road. And you know what? More power to them. It's like, stick it to the man. I also say that because where I grew up, it was like everyone had dirt bikes, and it didn't matter that the fact that we rode them down the road. I don't think the cops exactly cared either. They had other things to do. Like deal with probably lots of domestic violent issues. There's a 0.047 rated capacitor. Is that just going to ground? Why is it making that huge diversion all the way to there? Well, that's just going to ground. I'm going to change that. Oh, I see. This post is getting in the way. That's why they ran it under. All right. Well, whatever. You know what? Rules are meant to be broken. I don't have to run it down there just because. Run it over. Well, we're probably not going to have any more rain out here. Getting out of the rainy season and into the dry season. And not sure if the snowpack is enough. Hey, from Scotland. I'd love to go to Scotland, but I don't think I'm going to be traveling to other countries right now because probably a lot of the world is not very happy with us. And I think I just need to wear a shirt or something that has, I don't know, the California flag on it or something. Anyway, I'll say enough. I'll shut up about that. I've got enough shit I'm dealing with right now. I can't focus on that right now. Scotland. That's where my great-grandfather came from. I remember years ago my grandmother showed us the quote-unquote family plaid. I don't know where that went. And they would have these get-togethers sometimes at the fairgrounds. You could go find your plaid. I'm not sure if that's a thing in Scotland or anything, but it seemed like it was a deal out here in the old days. And then to have these contests, like who could throw this huge fucking log. It's like a pole. Like throw a pole. A lot of people in North Carolina, Tennessee, they came from that part of the world a long time ago. Well, not really a long time ago, but by American standards, they did. Okay, I'm pretty satisfied with that. I always check my work, especially I want to make sure that if I put something in, it's not going to. It's also important to check because you might have something that is sort of tight, but if it's not totally tight, you're going to have resistance problems, and that can lead to failure. God, this thing is just full of them, full of capacitors. Right, what is that going to? That appears to be going to pin number 8. Pin number 8, I think of EABC 80. Okay, it's also a 0.02 rated capacitor. Get some crap out of the way. Mark that, and that comes around and attaches there. I'm gonna get off my ass. Someone gave me this really bright shop light. It is intensely bright, and I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I at least need to hang it temporarily and plug it in and see how bad it is. But if it's really bright, I can do things like film these chassis without all these shadows. Either that, what I need to do is get one of those fancy rotisserie things that some guys make, and we have one at our museum that's sitting in the floor. But I can't help myself. I'm so used to doing things this way. Just have to be real careful that you don't set anything in such a way where you're going to damage it from sitting on top of itself like that. I've handled enough of these chassis to kind of understand which way you can set them without damaging them. American stuff's not such a big deal. The American stuff is like everything is underneath the chassis except for the tubes and the transformers and some of the other stuff. So it's like that stuff's kind of indestructible, so you can set them upside down. But some of the European sets have everything mounted up top, like the ferrite rods, all the capacitors going to the output transformers. Not always. Most fragile radios I've ever worked on seem to be Philips. Philips are very fragile, in my opinion, especially the weird way they run their wiring, which is borderline insane, in my opinion, in some ways. And worse than that is some of the ways that they run their tuning strings. I've been heartbroken by a few of these beautiful Philips biampli units that I've worked on over the years, and I've had more than one that came in where the one or more of the tuning strings, or in this case wires, had broken. And it's borderline not repairable unless you just want to spend like a week solid, which I have done. And I've gotten to a point where I'm like, nope, not going to do it. I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to work on dual brand record players either. It's like I think there's a middle ground when it comes to engineering, especially when it comes to durability, serviceability, and reliability. And I feel that on one extreme, you have, I don't know, like some of the old General Motor V8 engines. Those things will go forever and ever and ever, and they're still cranking them out and putting them in trucks. They're very generic engines, but they'll go forever. Or like the Toyota stuff. The Toyota engines will go forever and ever too. And on the other end, you've got some of the exotic German cars, and some of them are absolutely fantastic in every way, but some of them are, on the other hand, the engineering is so exotic that in some cases the serviceability of the car is also very difficult. And a lot of those exotic things break and become very costly and exotic things to replace. I don't know. Okay, is there any more of these? Yes. I'm just looking around here. There's one more that goes all the way up through to the volume control. It's 0.015. I'll just have to settle with 0.02. And there's going to be some stuff up top. In fact, once I get this replaced, I'll get to the top surface-mounted capacitors, because I think what I have to do is flip this over to replace the other side. Those inline sixes, yeah, my granddad had a poverty, what we call a poverty spec Ford F-150 back when trucks were your cheap option because you couldn't afford a car, and also because you needed to haul shit around. And it had a straight six in it. And by the time that granddad got up there in age, he would kind of forget to maintain the truck. So I'd go over there every once in a while and check the oil and make sure everything is all right. But a few occasions I can come over there and, like, the thing would run low on coolant and it was still going. But he racked up well over 300,000 miles on it. And then one day he ran a red light and totaled the truck, but it was still running fine. And they've put it on the record. And that was the end of Granddad driving, but he survived, and that truck served him well. And these days, whenever I see one of those, I think about his truck. And I kind of wish they made trucks like that again, because like it did exactly what you wanted it to do, which was haul things. And the interior was all plastic and vinyl, so you could hose it out, which was very handy because do things like haul manure and disgusting things like that, you're going to get it all over your shoes or your boots. Or get it in the truck. So when you're done, you hose it out. What a great idea. And now they're all fancy. It's like there's heated everything, heated seats and steering wheels, and they're no longer the cheap option. It's unbelievable. Some of these trucks are like $100,000 or more. And from what I understand, they're starting to sell some of these giant American trucks in Australia, and they cost an insane amount of money just for the same model that would cost maybe 45,000 is like over 110,000. Then again, I'm not sure what the exchange rate is, but yeah, lots and lots of money. Far cry from Granddad's straight six F-150 with the plastic hosable interior. Sorry to keep on hitting that. God, pain in the ass. This is why these take forever. That, I'm going to try not to hit that tuning string, because if I do that, that's a world of hurt right there. Major world of hurt. So let's just get all that area cleared out. Right, well, I said there was a lot of stuff to replace up top, but actually there isn't. There's only this one electrolytic. And what value is it? Isn't that cute? They've run this wire over this, I guess, to hold it together. But this is positive here. Mark this just so I remember that's positive. There we go. Fracco. 35 microfarads, 40 volts. Is that really what that is? It's just, yeah, 40 volts. No, it says 20 microfarads, or I read that wrong. Okay, that's 35 working, probably 40 volts max, and 20 microfarads. All right. Well, I'll be back in a second. I have an electrolytic capacitor I need to get. Okay. See what I mean? I had to go in and get a capacitor that I had on my other workbench. And I came back in, and now I can look at my little red marking and remember, oh yeah, just don't forget that's positive. Oh shit, that sleeve just fell through that hole. Now I got to get another one. All right. So today I also got a replacement ECC85, which of course is for the FM stage, because the one that was in it was kind of weak, even though it was still kind of working. Quit being a pain in the butt. Now I know the eye tube in this thing's already bad, and I'm not sure if I'm going to replace it. They're pretty costly these days, and they have pretty short life expectancies. So I'm going to think about it. All right, well, now that I have all that taken care of, it's time to take care of some chores, household chores, before I get too much further. And that consists of making sure that the tuning mechanism works the way it should and is not going to jam up, and also not going to have too much friction, because if you have these things, I tell you what, I've had a bad experience with some of these. The temptation to come in here and just tune the crap out of everything, don't do that. If you have bearings that are stuck or frozen, when you do that, you can, with all the pulleys and everything, snap the tuning strings, which are very delicate on these. And so I'm going to make sure everything is kind of at least wetted up with a little oil. And make sure, I mean, it was kind of moving okay before, so I don't think it's that much of a problem. But sometimes, especially if they've been somewhere damp, your bearings can get a little bit seized up. And there's several things to lubricate. Don't get it anywhere near your tuning strings, because if you do, you're going to be real sorry. Trust me. Yeah, that sounds pretty shitty. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Well, we've got a typical problem with these sets is that the mating surface between these, believe it or not, this has a clutch in it. It's these two guys. The clutch material tends to harden up because it used to be rubber, and so on my AM broadcast, this is not engaging. Now granted, it could be also there's a little bit of rust here, and the springs are maybe not pushing this up as hard as it should be because it's getting stuck. Sometimes what you can do is get a little screwdriver, like a flat blade, dull screwdriver, and you want to work these back and forth a little bit. Kind of see how there's like a disc that's in the front, and there's one in the back too. And you can see this too is kind of dry back here. There's a little bit of corrosion on it. Sometimes I get my finger down in there if I can just move it back and forth. You want to make sure these are really freed up. You can see on FM this is working really well. And on these guys, on the FM tuning condenser, there's always going to be a bearing at your input pulley. The FM is moving very nicely now. You want it to have this weighted feel to it. Like it just feels nice. That's intentional. It's supposed to have this luxuriously kind of soft feel. Okay, let's see what happens on broadcast. Is it going to engage? No, not really, but also seems like maybe the tuning condenser for AM is also kind of sticky. Not unusual. This needs to be exercised a little bit. But I don't like that noise. That is definitely slipping. But there's a solution for that. And albeit it is a jerry-rigged solution, but it will work just fine. If I was, I don't know, if I was retired and I had like endless hours, then I would like think about this. All of that has to come off before I can get that off. I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry, because I have another way of doing it. As jerry-rigged as it is, will do the trick. And I'm going to show that to you as soon as I get one of my garbagey screwdrivers. I'll try to do the video format thingy. I'm sorry. I'm just, what I've been trying to explain to people is, like, I do creative work for a living. I've done it for probably the better part of 25 years. And it involves sitting on a computer and designing stuff all day long for an endless array of clients to sell things. And I just realized that when I was filming these, even though it's real easy, I mean, I used to film things with a VHS camera and try to convert that over or whatever. And I feel like I'm kind of at a point where I'm a little bit burned out, and having to edit videos together just felt like a chore. And that's lazy, because the production quality was already really bad, and this production quality is even worse. And I don't know. What I'm doing right now, so that's why I'm not doing live. That's why I'm not doing edited videos. I think if I have a live streaming camera on its way, which is supposed to actually kind of self-edit or give you ways to edit easier in the cloud. And I think if it was something like, okay, I just did that, let's edit it, and whatever little robot fucking thing is like, okay, sure, maybe. All right, what I'm doing is I'm applying this product called Lexel, and I'm kind of putting a thin layer on the entire underside or the backside of this dried out rubber disc. What this is going to do is eventually dry, but not harden, because it's an elastic adhesive, a clear elastic adhesive. And I'm going to make sure that I put it on broadcast and smoosh them together real good. Now, of course, it's going to slip now, but I want to work that in real good, coat the underside real evenly, and pull it off, and spin this to make sure everything is good and free. And then take a flashlight and look underneath here that I get everything. Yes, I did, but I want to put just a little bit more on there because I want it to be on there just a little bit thick. Intentionally thick. So it'll have just a little bit of a cushion to grip in and to engage with the flywheel, the tuning flywheel. Okay, just a little bit more. Then I'm going to work it in. And then release. Again, FM doesn't really seem to have a problem whatsoever. It's very nice. Okay, that's effortless now. And I'm not worried about the AM and shortwave bands because that glue is going to need to sit and cure overnight. And to give you an idea that how good that stuff is, here's my ancient sandals that I've had for probably the better part of 15 years. I glued them together with Lexel. Anyway, I was showing my mom that because when I was a kid, I couldn't bear to get rid of my shoes if they were worn out, so I'd try to stick them back together with glue and tape, and then my parents would throw them away because they said you can't go to school like that, but I did. So I relived the glory days by gluing together my sandals with Lexel glue. Anyhow, I just realized that it's about an hour, and I don't know how that happens. I just look over and just think about how long have I been doing this, and it somehow winds up being an hour. So I want to appreciate you guys listening to me yak away. And Billy, I see you. I hear you about the 25 to 30-minute videos. And I'll try to see what that looks into. And if the new camera comes in and it makes it a little bit easier, I'll try. Hey, Paul, I'm sorry you just got here. Yeah, I'm getting ready to sign off, but tomorrow what I'm going to do just depends. I might do a mobile version because I've got the cabinet over here. And let me show you what the cabinet looks like before probably going to be upside down. There it is. You see that over there? That's the cabinet. And I can't see it. There's a record player next to it. It's hidden back there. Anyway, so I've worked on the record player. This is the chassis. And what I intend to do tomorrow is go ahead and put this back in the chassis, not the chassis, put it back in the cabinet. Yeah, that car. So that's a 49 Plymouth that has a flat head, straight 6 in it. It's about the most generic engine you could possibly imagine. It's just a chunk of iron. But that car was painted by students at the local community college a long time ago, and they did a pretty good job. It's a serviceable paint job. And that's part of the reason I got it. That's because I liked the color. Anyhow, y'all be safe and take care, no matter where you happen to occupy, what corner of the globe you're at. And I'll talk to y'all later. I'll try to do it again tomorrow. And I'm going to try to improve the camera situation. Like I said, I have a new one on the way called a Mevo. And apparently a Mevo is better for doing mobile streaming and higher quality autofocusing, better microphone, better clarity for detail, which this camera has none of. So to be continued. See y'all later. Bye.